The narrative begins by introducing two brothers who are going camping and hunting in one of the beautiful forests of the national park in Florida. We come to know them as Mike and Sean. Inside the vehicle is also the doctor named Ellen, Mike's wife. They decided on the trip weeks earlier to take advantage of the brothers' return to the country and strengthen their bond with each other and with nature, just as they did when they were children. They bring along Sean's dog, Scott. On the way, Mike shows his cell phone and states that Sean needs one, in case people want to communicate with him. The man claims that this type of device can be harmful to his health, so he prefers to abstain from such equipment. On the way to their destination in the forest reserve, they talk a little about their lives and how memories of the past remind them how important their friendship is. Hours later, they stop at a station to refuel and buy more supplies. While Mike handles work issues on his cell phone, Sean buys a battery, stating that being prepared is never too much. Eben smiles and walks away to go to the bathroom. There, she takes a pregnancy test, where her suspicions are confirmed. Minutes later, they arrive at the entrance of the protected reserve, where they observe that the park is closed. However, considering it irrelevant, they cross the entrance and head to the destination where they will camp. Upon arriving at the parking area, they grab their belongings, including the family rifle, which was gifted to Sean. However, Mike is more modern and possesses a more sophisticated precision rifle. Inside the car, Eben takes medication and is briefly admired by Sean, which is noticed by Mike, who ignores the looks and leaves the place. The trio decides not to follow the map trails, since the goal is also to hunt. Scott goes with them, and so as not to lose sight of him, Mike places a GPS signal on him. On the way, they pass by a small abandoned park, but do not notice several pairs of shoes thrown inside the slide. Initially, they walk along the trails, observing the nature around them, with Sean warning that in the animal kingdom they are never observing, but rather being observed by animals that hide. Soon after, they begin the hunting journey off the trails, and with a spray, Mike paints the trees along with his brother, saying that this will be the marking so they do not get lost when they return. Minutes pass and the brothers prepare the traps in different ways. Sean is more artisanal, while Mike uses more mechanical equipment. To pass the time, Sean shares what he knows with Ellen, stating that hunters must be clever and always reach places before their prey notices. He asks his sister-in-law to close her eyes and count to 3. When she opens her eyes, she does not see the man around. Subtly, Sean climbed a tree and surprised the woman, a moment that draws smiles from the group. After walking a little more, they arrive at a small watchtower where they decide to spend some time and wait for prey to pass by. A few minutes later, the hunt proves to be fruitful, and a deer walks through the nearby vegetation. Ellen is holding her husband's rifle, and she will be the first to shoot, since she is the beginner of the group and needs to learn. However, the noise she makes on the wood scares the animal away. But being a competitive woman, she leaves the tower and chases the prey. She runs through the forest in search of the animal. Further ahead, by luck, in another direction she sees another distracted animal grazing. She points her rifle and considers shooting, but at the last moment hesitates. Suddenly, Sean appears and shoots the animal, stating that the group's meal is guaranteed. Back at the camp, while Sean prepares the hunted animal for dinner, he confronts Ellen about her courage. The woman corrects him, stating that she is vegan and does not usually eat meat, but as a doctor, she does not get sick at the sight of blood. She talks about the cases she saw at the hospital, and Sean talks about what he witnessed while serving in the army. The conversation is interrupted by Mike, who invites his wife for a swim in the lake. The moment is fun and the couple enjoys the leisure. After getting out of the water, the two plan their future together. And for a second, Ellen suggests to her husband that they have a child. Such words make the man say that at the moment children scare him, and he is not prepared for such responsibility as a father. This leaves his partner surprised, since she wishes to have a complete family. Mike apologizes for his lack of attention regarding this subject desired by the woman, and claims that he has a lot of worries on his mind. One of them being his brother. Sean, since he arrived, sleeps inside the car, and what Mike knows is that he was fired from his last job for unknown reasons. Ellen returns to the previous conversation and says that she needs to say something important, but Mike decides to answer a work call. Hours pass, and at night the trio gathers around a bonfire to eat together. Sean tells them that the next day they will hunt the old-fashioned way, and hands the GPS to Mike, who, worried about his wife's safety, leaves it with her in case she does not go with them. Ellen says she does not see herself as a hunter and prefers to stay at the camp doing yoga, since she does not think she can kill something. To try to encourage her friend, Sean tells a mythological story about a girl who did what was necessary, and in the end ended up being known as a goddess in her village. The tale is interrupted by another call from Mike's cell phone, and he decides to answer it, leaving the others alone. While he resolves company issues, Sean and Ellen talk about their childhoods and how the games were fun, and even the game Truth or Dare was entertainment between them. Sean unexpectedly asks if she wants to play with him. Among the trees of nature, Mike talks to his work partner when the phone signal drops. Suddenly, a sound of breaking branches echoes nearby, which worries Mike. He carefully observes with the cell phone flashlight, but ends up being startled by Sean's dog. The animal barks, but that does not bother Mike. Then he takes a photo with the dog and does not notice that something hides among the vegetation. Back at the camp, he interrupts Sean and Ellen's playful moment and asks them to go to sleep. He and his partner enter the tent, while Sean sleeps next to a tree. The night passes, and in the morning Ellen wakes up with an X mark on her forehead, and the worst is that the tent she was in disappeared, along with her belongings. She wakes Mike, and the two realize that Sean has disappeared. Mike angrily begins to blame his brother for the bad joke, stating that Sean must have gotten worse in the head after stopping his medication, and is putting them through a traumatic experience. However, he suddenly appears claiming that the tracks indicate that thieves stealthily approached and took everything from them, even the dog. Even with his brother's words, Mike gets irritated, knowing that this type of thing is Sean's doing, believing that he is the one who hid all the things. He furiously asks about his cell phone and silences Ellen when she tries to calm the confrontation. Sean defends himself and says that he is not guilty, and states that by the tracks there were 3 people. Mike still does not believe his brother. After a brief argument, Ellen asks the brothers to stop and return to the vehicle. Sean says he can orient himself by the sun and asks them to follow him. Sometime later, fatigue already bothers them. Mike, even following his brother, asks his wife to remain by his side because he does not trust that his brother is leading them to safety. At a certain distance, Sean asks the couple to head west, where soon they will find the marks on the trees and reach the car soon after. He, however, will stay behind and will go in search of his dog. Mike becomes even more irritated, asking Ellen not to believe that his brother is telling the truth, fearing that he is having a psychotic break and is leading them even deeper into the forest. His wife appears to believe Sean, which further increases suspicions that something is happening between the two. Jealous, Mike goes to attack his brother, and the two engage in physical combat. Wanting to end the confrontation, Ellen loudly says that she is pregnant with Mike's child, a revelation that makes him surprised and end the fight. The next scene shows the couple walking alone in the forest and talking about Ellen's unexpected pregnancy. She is upset about the circumstances in which she told him, but the moment soon becomes lighter when Mike admits that he is quite happy about the child who is coming. The two walk together, but someone watches them from behind the trees. Wanting to reach the car, they look for the mark on the tree, but end up being surprised to see many other painted marks, confusing them about the direction they should go. Moving away from the couple, Sean searches for his animal and whistles to call him. Suddenly, the sound of the dog's bawl echoes through the vegetation. Believing it to be his animal, Sean goes toward it, but at the location finds nothing. The direction of the sound changes and he runs to find his animal. However, at that moment, the ball hits his head from behind, and that makes Sean understand that someone camouflaged in the forest is playing with him. Sean now looks for a person, perhaps an experienced hunter. However, at that moment he stops in an open area, and drops of blood fall onto his face. Looking up, he discovers his animal dead, something that makes him very sad, because he loved the dog Scott. Suddenly, shots almost hit him, and quickly he takes cover behind the trees. Realizing that the enemy is inside the watchtower, he prepares himself with a stick and stealthily moves under the shelter. He notes that there is only one enemy, so he slowly climbs to confront him. He climbs the guard post and injures the opponent's leg, leaving him at a disadvantage, then hits the masked man's head several times with the weapon. The rifle is out of bullets, so when Sean turns to reload it, the enemy man rises as if he were not injured and drives his blade into Sean, then pushes him out. Unfortunately, Sean collapses on the ground, bleeding to death, and his enemy records a video using his cell phone. Back to the couple, they walk seeking to find the way back to the car, and to make the moment less tense, they consider several names for the baby. In a moment of pause, Mike looks around and comes across water bottles hanging by a rope on the tree. He manages to grab one of them, but when he returns to Ellen, he does not watch where he steps and ends up having one of his feet severely injured by the bear trap that he himself brought to the forest. The pain is extreme, which makes him scream uncontrollably. Minutes later, we see him being supported by his companion, barely able to walk. Fortunately, they find the forest ranger cabin ahead and hope to find some help there. However, there is no one left in the abandoned place. They look for something useful and find in a drawer a radio communicator. Anne tunes to a frequency and asks for help, but no one responds due to the static. Then she tends to her companion's foot wounds, finding afterwards a map. Anne scribbles the paths on her arm and says which way they should go, but Mike fears them going in that direction. He states that the safest place is climbing the mountain after the lake. However, he will not go, because he will delay his wife. Then he asks her to go alone as fast as she can. Suddenly, while they say goodbye, a cell phone ringtone echoes at the entrance door, and along with that, the enemy steps heavily on the wooden boards. The moment leaves both surprised and fearful. They hide behind the table, believing that the enemy will pass by without finding anyone there. However, he circles the cabin, and Mike knows that at some point the unknown man will enter. Wanting to protect his wife, he tells her that he will draw the enemy's attention, and she must run and follow the plan. Ellen does not want to do that, but Mike hands one of the radio communicators to her and a small pair of scissors and says there is no other choice. He gets up and exits through the door, but at that moment, he comes across Sean's identification tags hanging with bloodstains. He screams, calling the enemy, and soon finds him hiding among the vegetation. The man fires, forcing Mike to run. Even with the injured foot, he moves as fast as he can and manages to reach a small disposal area with public bathrooms there. Fearing the armed unknown, he locks himself inside one of the stalls. Inside the place, he finds a small metal bar and peers outside, seeking a view of the enemy. However, his hunter surprises him and begins stabbing the stall with knife blows, almost injuring Mike. The masked man, not satisfied, turns to the door and begins forcing his way in, which gives Mike time to open an upper compartment and get out. Thus, when the man shoots at the stall, Mike jumps on him and tries to knock him out. Using all his strength, he manages to slam the enemy's head against the toilet lid and apparently leaves him unconscious. Mike was leaving satisfied from the place, when suddenly, the masked man's partner appears over the stall, and when Mike turns, hearing the trigger of the gun, a shot hits him. Meanwhile, Ellen reaches the mountain and begins to climb. It is noticeable that she has no mountaineering experience, and right at the beginning, she already has difficulty on the ascent. Straining as much as possible, she manages to reach the top. Happy, Ellen tunes the frequency and talks to her husband. He, who is still alive, responds. However, we see him lying inside a trash container, appearing paler than normal. He was shot and is losing a lot of blood. Mike laments not being able to see what his future holds and says that Ellen must be strong because the hunters will go after her. The only choice is for her to be brave and also to be brave enough to kill her enemy. Mike stops talking and dies. Ellen does not understand and calls for her husband to answer her, but the truth is revealed. He was thrown inside the dumpster along with his brother Sean, both now dead. Without her knowing, the masked enemies, who are 3, leave the bodies behind and go in search of her. A few minutes later, Ellen notices the hunters approaching by bicycle. They found her quickly because the GPS was on, which exposed her location. Realizing this, Ellen tears off the device and continues running. Frightened, she does not watch the path carefully. She trips on a rock and tumbles downhill. When she falls, she hits her head and becomes dizzy, but fortunately is not found by the hunters. She quickly shelters inside a sewage pipe and camouflages herself in the mud, and when she is hunted, the hunters do not find her there inside. The trio moves away, giving her some time to rest a little. Minutes later, she crawls through the pipeline and finds the exit. She slowly comes out and observes that she is close to Sean's car. Without thinking twice, she breaks the window and enters the vehicle. She tries a hot wire but cannot. Going to check the engine, she discovers that they stole the battery and left a conflicting message. Furious, Ellen laments in rage, and after seeing the photo of her wedding, she takes a deep breath. Having a cut on her head, she prepares an improvised needle and thread to stitch her wounds. Then, already recovered, she begins to plan something and grabs equipment from the trunk, and this time, she goes out hunting her enemies. The scene changes, and we learn who these enemies are. One of them has asthma and needs to use his medication constantly. The group consists of 3 young delinquents and troublemakers, criminals who, due to shooting games, are inspired to commit atrocities against human victims. They communicate among themselves using cell phones, and one of them states that they need to return to their homes so they do not have problems with their parents. However, one of them considers continuing and capturing the woman who is still alive, a witness who may be a problem later. Suddenly, signal flares are lit inside the vegetation, which draws their attention. The group goes to check, knowing that the only one who could be there is the woman. They are right, because Ellen uses the smoke to hide among the trees. Without one of them knowing, Ellen is stalking him nearby. She begins to make noise and bother one of them. Quickly, she surprises him with a metal crowbar and knocks him out. However, she does not kill him, because her human personality is not criminal. Half an hour later, after the companion does not return, at the guard cabin, the other approaches and sees his friend's mask. He enters to check the place, but finds nothing out of the ordinary. The young man pauses to communicate with the others, when Ellen emerges from the darkness with the rifle and holds the criminal at gunpoint. He proves to be fragile and shows the inhaler, but suddenly turns and hits her with the spray from the respiratory inhaler. The moment is tense when both try to reach their rifles. Fortunately, Ellen is faster and fires a shot against her enemy. Then she uses the cell phone to plan a trap for the oldest one. Minutes later, the offender heads to the location that Ellen mentioned, without knowing that it was his prey pretending to be his companion. He walks through the vegetation and ends up finding something that he thinks is his companion disguised. However, he is surprised by Ellen, who was high up in the tree waiting for the exact moment to attack. She uses thick cables to suffocate the man, but he is strong and knocks her down from the branch. Ellen tries to grab the weapon, but the man is faster and knocks her out with a piece of wood. Then we see him dragging her to a remote place, where he ties her to a table and begins to torment her. He questions her about his friends, but she does not answer. The young man takes a blade and threatens to hurt Ellen, which leaves her even more terrified. Before he strikes her body, his phone receives a call. The criminal's mother calls, and not wanting to worry the lady, he answers and states that he is almost going home. While he is on the cell phone, Ellen uses the details of the ring to cut the cable that holds her. Thus, when the young man hangs up the call, he looks at the empty table, since Ellen fortunately escaped before the worst could happen to her. The criminal returns to search for the woman, who hides wherever she can. Unfortunately, the park is small, and soon she is found. The young man grabs her with a chain and tries to hurt her. Ellen is weaker and ends up falling almost unconscious. The criminal throws himself on her and tries to suffocate her. However, Ellen bravely uses her last breaths to react to save her life. Seeing a shard of glass on the ground, she grabs it with effort and delivers a fatal blow to her opponent's neck. The young man falls next to her and dies with her staring directly into his eyes. Minutes later, already recovered, Ellen sees the criminal recordings that the boys made of their victims, and this is the proof of the crimes committed by them. She mourns the loss of her husband and brother-in-law and reflects that her child would have had a great father, if not for the criminals. The next scene shows her leaving the park with one of the boys' bicycles, returning home carrying with her a traumatizing experience in the forest.